You came over the radio, I believe it was the end of stage 1 when you were still good in the race, and said something to the effect of thanking your crew chief for whatever he found here at Dover, because for the majority of your career, you've hated this place, right? What has Chris found that's made you like this track?
I don't know what it is, but certainly it started from the very first time I started working with Chris Gabehart and the team, him and Sam, the lead engineer, and Ryan, second engineer. They just really have come up with a setup that even through Generation 6 to now the next gen, they found something that I like at that racetrack. They found a balance that is home. It's our blankie that we always go back to, like, whenever in doubt, we're going back to this type balance because I like it. And so whatever it is, it's just really turned the corner. I spent 13, 14 years at that racetrack just scratching my head, not understanding.
That's what I'm wondering. How can you spend 15 years studying a track and not find it?
I did, a little bit of self-reflection as well. I started working on my craft at that racetrack as well. I started approaching the racetrack a little differently. So what that meant was that I looked at film, I studied some of the best drivers at the racetrack, and I said, well, okay, if I have to drive it this way, I'm going to need something different out of my car. So team, work on making my car better here because I have to drive it differently and work around that. And so we just started working on getting the simulator and fine-tuning it. And so I did. It's one of, I don't know if I'm going to say it's one of my favorite tracks, but it's one that I really get excited to. And unfortunately, we only go there once a year now. But yeah, it's I appreciate how tough it is. It is definitely a physically tough track. I am worn the out right now. My back is killing me. But I do. It's a very technical track that I think that, some of the best drivers really show up at, which is why you see Jimmy Johnson win there 10, 12 times, whatever he did.
Do your teammates take some of this too? Does it help your teammates at this track?
Well, my teammates were some of the flagship guys that I looked at and studied was Martin Truex and Kyle Busch. And I just tried to figure, since I knew what equipment they were in, I used that as my tools. Well, it's very hard to compare cars it's a little easier now in next gen era, but back in Gen 6 era, it was so hard to compare myself with a Hendrick car or a Roush car, whatever it might be, because who knows how their car is built. They got a whole different chassis. Some things are not possible because of physics and how my car works versus theirs. But now in next gen era, where everyone has the same parts and pieces, it's just about setup really, and simulation and driver. I feel like you can compare other organizations a little bit easier.
So late in this race, we have a caution, brings everyone to pit road. Martin Truex, who is leading the race, decides to take 2 tires. Chastain takes 4 tires. And then after the race, in his post-race comments, Martin's crew chief had mentioned that they took 2 tires because they knew that taking 2 was going to keep them in the lead and controlling the restart.
Yeah, they didn't have a whole lot of faith that if they went 4 tires against Ross's 4 tires on pit road, they were going to lose the lead, is what they, and listen, by the numbers, that's probably true. Ross has got one of the best pit crews on pit road. He has for the last couple of years. It's, one of the things that really doesn't get said enough is that William Byron's team, that's why they're up front so much. They hold serve like 90% of the time. That they come in first or second, they're coming out there. And if they're 5th or 6th, they're coming out on the front row. Like, track position is so important in our game that they are just riding the coattails a lot of times of that pit crew, and that just keeps putting them up front more and more and more. Where on the flip side of it, right, I have the opposite problem where pit stop comes or yellow flag comes out, and I just hold my head and I'm like, how many are we going to lose? Like, it's just part of it, right? It's,
that's the nature of the game, right? If someone's come in and gaining 2 spots, someone's probably losing 2 spots.
Yeah, no doubt. And so, I think that there's probably 5 or 6 really, really reliable pit crew teams where that if they're up front, they're probably not going to make a mistake. They're going to hold serve most of the time. 80, 90% of the time, they're going to hold serve. And then there's kind of the rest, everyone else, right? So it's just really hard to win. It's hard to win, which is why early in the race, Fox is playing my my in-car of me, telling Christopher Bell, get the out of the way. A lot of that was because I was so frustrated that I just went from damn near winning the stage, and I'm all over William to beat him in the stage, and then I come out 8th in the next pit stop, and I'm like, so then I passed a couple guys. I ran Christopher Bell down, and I'm like, he's sliding up a little bit in the mid-corner, and I'm jamming my nose in there mid-corner to like, hey, I'm here. And he would come down, and like, he's just trying to keep his position. I was just venting at the time. But I wasn't as mad at him as I was just at the scenario of, why am I back here again? And I got to go make another 3-wide move. I got to pass the same damn race cars again that I just passed, which is why I'm leading the series by 1 billion on quality passes, evidently, per NASCAR. So it's not a stat you want to lead, because it just means you're passing the same cars over and over and over again. But listen, we're going to work it out. I mean, I've had really good pit crews throughout my career. The last couple of years have certainly been a very rough patch for us. I don't know how many races we've lost by just not being able to control the race. That is, come in first, come out first, or just come out second or third. Just not these big catastrophic failures that are, 20 seconds, when we're leading at Richmond, and 20 seconds like that. It just, you can't overcome it. Like, you just can't overcome it. And then thank God there were only 8 cars on the lead lap, because the last stop we would have been, if there was 26 on the lead lap, we would have finished in the 20s again. Chopper would have been pissed. So, I mean, listen, it's a team sport, and we're going to win together and lose together. I guarantee you those guys are at the race shop. First thing, when you're hearing this podcast, I can assure you our pit crew guys are at the race shop working on it. They're going to find what it is that can make us better, make us more consistent. We got better in the playoffs. Now, we did do a pit crew swap in the playoffs, but now, so for those who don't know, so I have really most of Truex's team from last year. Truex has the 18 team that I had in the playoffs from last year, if I'm right. And the 54 has
your original team.
My original team from the beginning of last year. And the 20 has found their magic sauce, and they've been probably the most consistent of all the pit crews at JGR over the last probably 10 months or so. So they've got theirs kind of hemmed up and worked out. I think we just got some work to do for sure on ours, but we'll get it fixed. And I got faith in them. These guys, again, these are the same guys that knocked off. I don't know what that pit stop was on the first one, but it had to be in the low 9s. So they're definitely capable. There's just little itty bitty things, and it doesn't take much to just send one of these pit stops off the rails.
Before we button this up, you had referenced old style pit stops in your post race comments. For those that don't know, what is the difference between the old style and the new style besides just 1 lug versus 5?
So JGR, it was a big to-do last year. They came out with their own style of pit stop, right, where both right side changers come around the front of the car. So it allows, by the data, it gets the engagement on the right rear hub quicker. Instead of the person having to wait on the car to stop, he runs around, engages the right rear tire. On the pit stop, they're already sitting there waiting for me to come to a stop. Bam, they hit it. And so there's a time gain there. The problem with what we found with the JGR style pit stops, where both come around the front, and then the front changer goes around and is now the left rear changer when they get to the left side, is that you've got hoses being thrown all over the place. There's just more, let's just pretend that there's 16 things that can go wrong in the old style stop, where one comes around the front, one comes around the back. With the JGR stop, while it has the potential in the top end to be faster on speed, it probably had 25 things that could go wrong in a pit stop. There was just more things that could throw it off the rails. And so when it was right, it was right. There was many races last year where the way we were doing pit stops was kicking ass. And then all of a sudden we'd have ones that were just awful, and then we'd go to the back of the pack. So you just can't have that. And so when we hired our own pit crew members at 2311 this year, we decided we're going to go. It's obviously been proven that the old style, while less risky, teams are still doing it at a very fast pace. Let's just take a little bit of the risk out here by going back to the old style. The problem with that is we've been practicing the other style for a year. So now we're behind. And so it's going to take a little time, I think. Now, again, some of the issues that I had today isn't related to reps and that. It's equipment. It's human error on buttons or whatever it might be, right? Has nothing to do with which side you ran around the race car. But to get our speed faster, which we still need to do that, by the way, through our whole organization, it's going to take time because we're a year behind everyone.
On just practice.
On just reps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.